Producer Mike and I recently went on an outing, ostensibly to get some art supplies, but really, it was to reset my attitude. Vicarious YouTube living only goes so far before one falls off the edge and starts leaving critical comments on soap-making channels, such as, "I've never made soap in my life, but your embeds are askew." Yeah, it was time to get out of the house. Check it out. It's the Artist and Craftsman Supply in downtown Tacoma. It's an older building with a creative atmosphere thanks to the colorfully painted walls and ceiling. The staff were pleasant and allowed us to take video. While viewing the footage later, I couldn't get the Michael Myers slasher theme out of my head. I asked producer Mike if he was trying to be creepy. He said he was just nervous with it being his first video walkthrough. I understood because I felt awkward too. As I ogled the brushes next to a sign saying, "Please limit touching of products," I wondered, how much would be too much? Seriously though, we are both chronic hand washers, and we use sanitizer at home, in the car, and in stores. Of course, we were masked up too. And yes, I did limit my touching. I just had to give my brushes back at home extra handling later. So we ended up purchasing 2 items. Firstly, a set of Faber-Castell artist pens. The tips include a brush, a soft calligraphy, and a 1.5 bullet. Secondly, an 11-inch by 14-inch pad of watercolor paper. You know how with some faces, you can just tell those people have experienced hard living. You know, the deep-seated creases, the wind-worn complexion, the cold, flinty eyes. Well, a couple of years ago, I was given this watercolor set secondhand from a relative. I've used it probably a dozen times in between getting my Cotman and Holbein sets, but this is pretty much how I received it. I'm not being judgy here, simply curious when I ask, what sort of soul-destroying tragedy caused this? But back to the paper. Hopefully, you can see its texture here. It's Fabriano Studio watercolor paper, 25% cotton, 140 pound, cold press. And this was my first time using this brand. I'd already lightly penciled in the swatching plan, then went over it with the brush tip pen. It made a broader line than I expected and was somewhat flexible, though not as much as the soft brush tip, which I did not use on this piece. This is the soft calligraphy tip. I have no skills in that area, so yeah. And the 1.5 bullet tip. I wanted something lighter for the color labeling though, so I used a Sharpie fine pen for that part, which was done off camera. I was curious about these Pitt artist pens, so I visited the Faber-Castell website. and they state it's permanent and waterproof, pigmented India inks, light fast, acid-free, and pH neutral. Okay, that all sounds good. But there's nothing explaining what the heck pit means. They also say to store horizontally when not in use. And if I'm anything, it's a rule follower. Yes, in recent years, I've made an effort to rebel now and then, but old habits are hard to break. Plus, I can't afford to have to replace my art tools due to abuse or neglect. They aren't as resilient as, say, video producers. As you can see, the haggard appearance of the pans had no ill effects on the usability of these paints. As far as my preference, I place this set above the Winsor & Newton Cotman Skechers Pocket Box. For one thing, this has twice as many colors. But more importantly, I just have more fun with the Kuretake. Which is probably unfair because if I did any travel painting, I'd choose the Cotman. I mean, that Kuretake set is not mobile friendly. Then again, those Cotman paints take a bit of work to reactivate. So maybe I'm being more than fair. I have no big complaints about the paper. Although I didn't apply large washes, I was still pleased with how little warping occurred. There are a couple of places where it felt I was getting close to overworking the paper. One thing I was less than impressed with is how little texture there is, which is good for fine line penwork, but disappointing for brushwork. So, on first use, it doesn't strike me as that much better than the Canson XL and Strathmore 300 series. Of course, swatching is not the ideal way to test paper, so I'm interested to see how it behaves in future use. I'm happy to share this reminder that appearances can be deceiving. It's what's on the inside that matters. But still, if you look in the mirror and the first thing that springs to mind is hard living, then try adding some goat milk or cocoa butter to your soap recipe. And what the heck? Be a rebel. Go wild with the embeds. Until next time. Stay artsy, my cooped up at home until you need an attitude intervention friends.